Welcome back to What Have You. I'm Rachel Jankovic.
I'm Becca Merkel.
It's nighttime. We're at our overlook behind Goodwill, but we can really only see the lights of Walmart from here now. The Walmart and the Mormon church.
It's basically like an amazing vista.
Well, if anyone was in the La Quinta Inn swimming pool, I would have a super weird creeper view of that. And when that happens, we don't park here because it feels too sketchy.
We just roll down the hill a little bit.
Move away from this strange above shot of the La Quinta Inn swimming pool. And I am drinking a tea tonight.
That's novel and new.
It is.
Fresh.
I like tea, and it was actually well into the cold season here when I realized there's tea too, because you want a hot cup of something.
Yeah.
But I would end up giving myself lockjaw by having too much coffee in the day, and so then when I suddenly one day it hit me, oh, there's tea. I could have tea. So that's what I'm doing now.
Well, I'm just sticking with my Diet Dr. Pepper. That's what I'm doing.
So what we're telling you here in code is that it's a luxury night in Moscow, Idaho. The Walmart, the tea, the Diet Dr. Pepper. What's not to love about the situation? So, Becca, I have to tell you, because I find this hilarious. So, Luke and I have not been running lately, but we did run. Before we moved, we were running together a lot more, and then all of life was disrupted. And that included our running. And so yesterday, we were like, let's do it. Let's go on a quick run. So we blast out. It felt pretty good. We did. I like the Nike Run app, so you can listen to a coach, so we did like the first run. So what I'm telling you is, it's not much of a run. It was like a 20-minute run.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, but it felt good. It was like, did that.
Yeah, all right.
Did that. Everything seemed pretty solid about it until I got home and I had a Facebook message from someone that said they wanted to get together. A friend who was like, maybe we could get together. I saw you and Luke out for a walk. They saw us out for a walk, which reminded
Yes, I was.
Reminded them that we wanted to get together, which was great, except for that. Like, hang on, it wasn't that bad. I mean, it was the first run in a long time, but surely I wasn't actually walking.
That's pretty good.
I think I had moved beyond walking form.
Maybe she just saw you right in the driveway.
There was no excuse for it because
hilarious.
Actually, there was, and it doesn't matter. It still amuses me. They were driving the opposite direction of us.
Awesome. I still like the idea that your form was a walking form.
I know. It was like, well, we weren't like holding hands or anything. we were running.
That's pretty good.
That blessed me.
That's good.
It blessed me as one of those nice, evaluations of how you're actually doing.
Yeah. Meanwhile, at the Merkel home, I'm not a charismatic, but I'm beginning to think that we're being afflicted by a petty demon. It's like the most stupid things going wrong. Like all the stupid things all at the same time. Is this your confession? Oh no, I had a different confession for you. I'll get to that. But first I have to tell you about my petty demon affliction. Okay. It's like all the things. Like the car goes belly up for no clear purpose. It just does. It just does. Right as Ben and I are about to dash out of town tomorrow, which means we're scrambling around trying to figure out what we're going to leave for the kids so that they have something to drive, and it's that, and then of course you run out of dog food, and then it's everything. I wouldn't
usually attribute dog food.
Well, it is when you have a hungry dog and too many things. So I have Ben's class at NSA is over at my house right now. I fed them dinner and he's lecturing because he'll be out of town for the normal lecture time. So the Reformation theology class is at my house right now. So I was wildly, just getting that dinner sorted. But then I have to have all the soup night stuff done for tomorrow, but I won't be there. So I'm making all the bread in advance and trying to get all the chicken cooked in advance so I can leave the stuff so that when my girls get home from school, they can put it all together. It's just multifaceted, and then you run out of dog food in the middle of that where you're like, I can't.
Why dogs?
I can't. That. Then Ben was like, it's okay, I will run to the store for you. It's totally fine. Just make me a list. So I'd made him a list of stuff for those 2 dinners, which, because those were dinners where we were feeding students, it was going to go on one card and not my normal other card that I use. Anyhow, all to say, Ben runs out for me like a champion, but it was last night when he had to do a whole bunch of prep for other stuff. So he was going to just do a quick run and come back. But it was a credit card that he was going to use, which Winco doesn't take.
Oh, right.
So he was going to just run to Walmart instead, get the stuff. And then I remembered something, and I called him a ways into it, but it was like, oh, I might have missed it. So I called him, and I was like, are you still at Walmart? And he's like, yeah, I'm still here. And he goes, he's like, I'm at Winco. And he didn't even have the other card with him that he could use. And he's gone and gotten everything out of the bulk section.
Oh.
So then you're having to go put everything back and then leave and go to Walmart and start over. So it turned into it was almost 3 hours of grocery extravaganza. Then gets home and he had gotten 4 packs of chicken. I was trying to get it all cooked in advance for the 2 things. So throwing all the chicken breasts onto the parchment lined baking sheets, and I get enough where it was like, okay, this is plenty. Now the rest of it I'm going to put in the fridge for my kids' dinner. So I had that set aside. Tonight I go in to sort that out, and what do I find in the fridge? 3 empty packages of chicken, and I threw away the 4th one that had chicken. It was like, are you kidding me I threw away a whole pack of chicken.
I used to feel like people were exaggerating the situation when they would refer to pregnancy brain or whatever. I would say, you're just exaggerating this, until I had a day where my sister-in-law very sweetly sent me, this is in our little apartment, our little second apartment, sent me a gift card for maternity clothes. It was very sweet. And I opened it up. I was like, that's super nice. Read it, put it back in the envelope, and threw it away.
No! It's sad. It's real sad.
Same time, but Luke found it. He dumpster dived for me, which was because he's a good man. And then, same time, I went to cook a roast overnight. And I prepped the whole thing in a Dutch oven and did that. And then in the morning, when I got up, I was like, why don't I smell the roast? There's no sign of the roast. And I looked all over the kitchen for it and found it in the Dutch oven, back in the cupboard where the Dutch oven goes. Outfitted the whole roast and put it in the cupboard. Did that. And then I thought, that was when I acknowledged my brain is not what it could have been right now. It is not firing.
I know. Well, see, then I was cooking all the bread for both tonight and tomorrow. And I do maybe overstuff the bread a little bit in my oven. But if it's a solid enough dough, I can throw it on in there on the pizza stone. It does lop over a little bit and sometimes touches the edges of the oven because I have 3 loaves on one thing. Yeah. And so one edge might be a bit scorchy, and I just cut it off and throw it away, and it's fine. The rest of the bread's fine. But today, did I count wrong? I don't know. It was way too loose of a bread. So then I'm doing multi runs at it because I'm doing 2 nights worth. And I shoot the bread on in there and I shut the door. And when I look back, it has sagged off the side of the pizza thing, gone down through the racks of the oven, and then set up with a beautiful crust, completely encasing the rack of the oven. It did it in both, so I had this weird stalactite of dough hanging down. Had to tear that one out with spatulas and tongs and pot holders.
It's the life. So what's your confession?
It is the life. Oh, guys, I have to give a little confession to my sister here. I might have, I think I did buy the same shirt that you have. First, I won't wear it to church.
What shirt is this?
I think it is because it's the only cute shirt in Moscow. And I needed something for my trip. Okay, so it's kind of navy sweatshirt that has like a little like collar-ish. Did I invent it that you have this?
I don't think I have this.
Yeah, you do. I think you have it.
Oh, no. I have one.
Did you buy it at Marshall's?
No, I have one from J. Crew.
It
has like a checked ruffle around the neck.
Okay. I thought yours was checked. And then I saw this shirt and I needed...
Well, let the record show that Becca bought the shirt after I had it.
Yeah.
Thinking it was but it wasn't.
I sat there looking at it and I was like, I thought Rachel had one like this, but I think it's checked, but this one is striped, like it's a little blue and white stripe.
Well, we should wear them at the same time and get a photo shoot.
Yeah, I needed something to wear, and I was like, Ben, he was with me, I'm like, I have to call Rachel because I can't buy this. Because he was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, I can't buy the same shirt
Ben
Rachel
didn't
has.
have time for that nonsense.
Ben was like, that's so weird. Like, you don't need... And I'm like,
when you think of how often our husbands probably wear the identical outfit, I think it's probably fine. It'll be fine.
Okay, yours is from J. Crew. Mine is not J. Crew, and I bought it at Marshall's. So...
Well, we're in the clear. No confession necessary.
Phew, guys. We got through that little tense moment.
Yep. We sure did.
Yeah, okay, so people have been sending in questions at quite a rate.
They have been, and I regret to inform many of those people that I've been keeping a woefully inadequate list of the questions. And I started trying to be diligent about that, but I think I had a lapse.
Well, there were a number of
they happened real fast.
Here's a trivia one. I remember somebody asked about how did we choose our kids' names.
Oh, yeah, that was a question.
Answer that real quick, and then we can move on to some of the more like sin-oriented ones.
We'll just hope these things are not related.
So the whole choosing of a baby's name, it's a whole thing.
It's a deal.
It's a thing.
I think that the question we got had more to do with how to not be in charge of the whole situation.
Well, yeah.
But
and how much does it matter?
How much should you be throwing down about it?
Or like the question, the name.
I'd say it's one of the things you ought to consider when you're getting married is, do you have a foolish attachment to any bizarre names?
Well, at least for us, I think we just went into it assuming that we were going to pick one we both loved.
Yeah, we never had that concern. It was not on the table. If one of us had a really strong aversion to a name, that was enough to have it not be a thing.
Then again,
we probably argued about some of them in a come on, it's just not like that, because you know how much if you knew someone named something, it can affect you.
Yeah.
Unduly. Yeah. So the way that I'm the youngest on our side of the family, and the local family is my side of the family. So you guys used what was your... Well,
we had to have a system. Otherwise, we couldn't think of anything. So our system was, it's very funny. So for the boys, we named them, started as a great preacher and a world conqueror was what we were going with. A good post-millennial name, the gospel conquering. Yeah. So famous preacher and a world conqueror. So our oldest son is Knox for John Knox, and then Alexander for the Great. So Knox Alexander. So that's good. The problem is after you go to Alexander, you've kind of run out of world conquerors unless you wanted to go
throw in Napoleon.
Genghis. Yeah. And Napoleon failed anyway. So
he had a good run.
he had a time or two.
He had a time in the sun.
Came off of Elba strong, but anyway. But anyhow, so then we changed it for our second son to...
We had a system. It only held up through one son.
Well, we modified the system.
Well, to be fair, you had a number of girls in between.
Yeah, but it was a preacher and a warrior. a great warrior. But he didn't have to have necessarily conquered the world.
Yeah, you're like, never mind, let's walk this back.
So our second son, who is actually number 5, is named Judah, for Judah Maccabee.
The Hammer.
The Hammer, indeed, was his nickname. So Judah Maccabee.
Your Judah really lived up to Judah the Hammer as a child. Yeah, he really did.
He kind of is a hammer. So anyway, Judah, and his middle name is Wilson, for my dad, the preacher, and also his grandfather. And then the girls, and then our other qualification was we didn't want to name them something that was common, or that we really knew anybody else named that. So Knox and Judah, we didn't know any others at the time, although we do know some now. The girls, we went for, our system was a famous, beautiful woman and a poet. So our oldest daughter is Jemima, for Job's daughter, who in the second batch
were more beautiful than anyone.
Yeah, they were the most beautiful in all the land, and their father gave them an inheritance among the sons. So that's Jemima, and her middle name is Donne, like Donne, for John Donne, the poet. So Jemima Donne.
John Donne's poetry is well worth reading.
It is. Some of it's
pre-salvation
is rough and tough and hard to bluff, but still good nonetheless at times.
That beautiful batter my heart 3-person God.
For you as yet, but knock, breathe, shine, and seek to mend. Yeah, it's a great one. Or Death Be Not Proud, those ones. His holy sonnets are really beautiful.
Really good.
Then our second daughter is Belphoebe Anne. And Belphoebe is from a character in the Fairy Queen, book 2, I believe.
We have to say real fast that Belphoebe of the Fairy Queen is rad because it's a female knight of chastity.
Yes.
Which is rad because it's not a passive virtue.
Yeah.
It's a virtue that is militant.
Yeah, militant chastity. And she is basically a Christianized Diana. So she's Phoebe, but Belphoebe. So anyhow, we just call her Belle, but Belphoebe, and then Anne for Anne Bradstreet, and the poet. And then our third daughter is Hero, from the Greek myth Hero and Leander.
I feel like I should say Anne Bradstreet had her poems published by her, I think it was her brother-in-law who published her poems without her permission, and she was so embarrassed about it, but she wrote a little preface or something to it, maybe on a later printing or something. But she was great. But in her little preface, she said that it felt like having your child having gone out with their face unwashed.
Yeah.
Like that she was not ready for the whole world to see her poetry, and her brother-in-law had kindly just published it anyways.
Yep. So our third daughter is Hero, like Hero, not for the Shakespearean character,
not for the meat.
No, not a sandwich, not Eros. But I don't really much care for Hero in Much Ado About Nothing. But she's named for the Greek myth Hero and Leander. Hero was the beautiful girl who was on the island, and Leander would swim, or she was on the other side. He would swim the Hellespont every night, and then he drowned tragically. Anyway, that's a bummer. That's not why we just went with Hero. Not looking for...
It just came down to the fact that you liked the name.
We liked the name, and that was the beautiful woman, and the poet is Sidney, for Sir Philip Sidney. So she's Hero Sidney. So there you go. Knox Alexander, Jemima Donne, Belphoebe Anne, Hero Sidney, and Judah Wilson. That was our system. And we stuck to it.
And then Nate and Heather named their boys for, like, strong northern names.
With the Gallic kind of...
Yeah, the Gallic thing. And their daughters more southern. So they have Rory Douglas and Seamus James are their 2 boys. And then Lucia, Amira, and Marisol, which are all...
So you've got the northern-southern thing going between the boys and the girls.
Yeah, they did that. And Luke and I didn't end up with anything... We didn't end up with anything quite as...
systematized?
No, pretty much not. So all of our kids, we have Evangeline. All of our girls, no, I guess everybody has a family name in their name. Mm-hmm. And the boys have a Bible name and a family name. And the girls have 2 middle names, which came about, when you set out having children... How could we know that we would have 4 daughters? So when you have 3 names. I mean, we used 12 girls' names that we liked.
Yeah,
That's a lot of names that you start needing to come up with there. So we ended up doing, Lena is our oldest, and her full name is Evangeline. But the funny thing is we were settled on Evangeline May, but my middle name is Elizabeth after my grandma Bessie, who was Elizabeth. And backstory to this, you have to know that Grandma Bessie, my whole life, never wanted to live for anything. She was
That sounds wrong.
Yep, I'm going to clarify. She was a missionary. She was hilariously puddle-glummy. Like, very funny and witty and funny.
Dry.
Yes, like she was always quoting Eeyore. If you said, how are you? She would say, not very how. And she was a hoot. But she would also it was like their 50th anniversary coming up. And she was like, well, I don't mind if I'm in glory by then, but it would be like Thursday of this week that she didn't mind if she was already in glory. And she kept saying she would be fine if she just beat Jim to glory. And she was always planning, like she took a hilarious joy in, like she'd chosen all the hymns for her funeral and stuff. She was a goon in that regard. Not morbid, but hilariously not of this world either. She was just having her own time. And when I was pregnant with Lena, she said to me that I really hope I live to see this baby. Which, as funny as that sounds, to say that there I was, a full-grown woman with my first child, before I heard my grandmother want to live for anything. And we knew we would probably use Elizabeth at some point. But then you had that whole question of, what if we don't have any other girls?
Yeah.
What if Grandma passes away before she sees us use the name? And we really should. So we actually were in the hospital, and we'd already decided on Evangeline May. But Luke was like, let's just throw Elizabeth in there too. So she's Evangeline May Elizabeth, which is a mouthful, to be sure. But then after that, we didn't want to do the whole Tiki Tiki Timbo situation and have Evangeline May Elizabeth. And then our next name that we had was Daphne Ann, which is like, a little bit lopsided there. So at least we thought we needed to get the same number of names in there. So she is Daphne Ann Ruby. And then as it worked out, we ended up with Chloe Lynn Geddes and Blair Aubriolette. So all of them have a family name in there that they're named after. And then our boys as Titus James, Shadrach Aaron, and Moses Henry. Yep. So all of them, that's how it worked out. I have to say, though, we're taking a long time talking about our names. I have to say the funniest part about this to me is that when you have 7 kids and someone asks you their name, no one is listening at the end.
No.
So I'm like, yes, Lena, Daphne, Chloe, Titus, Blair, Shadrach, Moses. And that goes off pretty much without a hitch. You do that. But then when my older kids are all in school and I'm at the park with the 2 younger, and someone comes up and says, what are their names? And I'm like, this is Shadrach and Moses. And I'm like, whoa! As a standalone names, those are sort of large. Yeah. But then it makes me laugh because, it has been a funny... Those are good, strong names coming at the back end. Mm-hmm. I realized that maybe by child number 6, we were like, go big or go home. Nobody... And Shadrach, we found out there are 2 types of people in the world. Those who have been secretly always waiting for someone to be named Shadrach, and those who can't believe we've done that thing.
Well, we had that with Jemima. That one scared everyone to death. Also, she was born on April Fool's. So then we told everyone we named her Jemima, and they were like,
but what's her real name?
What is her name?
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it's good.
So that's basically what I would say is, but in actual advice, if you're having a lot of conflict over naming, I just would suggest really pray about your own attitude and make sure that you're not using your baby name as a proxy for other fights.
Yeah.
That you're not exerting.
But it should be something that's just really fun that the 2 of you try and do together.
Right, but if it's already not being fun, you might need to withdraw a touch.
And I would also say that if your husband has long dreamed of having a son named Sebastian.
Bucephalus.
Sebastian Bucephalus. If he has, from 2nd grade on, wanted a son named that.
Or Steely-Eyed Dan.
Then I feel like, you know what? Be gracious.
Oh, guys, I hope none of you are in this situation, but that's what I meant by should have checked on that before you signed up on
maybe it really matters to him.
Okay, but we would agree on the fact that you should not fight about it unless it's something that has unless there is a real spiritual element of concern. For instance, a
like Lucifer?
cross. No, I was gonna say if you're actually having the kind of conflict, like I want to make sure we find a gender ambivalent name or like a cross gender name, then that would be something you need to get pastoral help on that level. Just feel the need to throw that in there.
I'm gonna just qualify that remark. There's nothing wrong with having a name that could go either way. You're saying if there was
I'm saying if there's a spiritual component, yeah. Like if your husband is saying, I want our son to have a woman's name.
Just in case he ever wants to switch.
Or because I would like him to be Andrea or something. Then you need help on a different level.
Sure.
I'm just saying, I don't even know why we got here. We've talked way too long about names now.
Yeah. I think we can call that a wrap.
I think maybe we should retrace our steps and erase some of that.
I don't know. I think Sebastian Bucephalus has a little something going for it. Great war horses of history. Somebody should do that as a theme.
But, Bucephalus was Alexander's.
It was his horse, his dear horse.
Yeah. So,
anyways.
Let's do something else now.
Sure. There were other questions in the world. There were, somebody was asking about what is the line between, and I thought this is a good question. Actually, this came from a guy. So he was wondering how to interact with a wife or fiance or girlfriend in this regard.
A woman,
but a significant woman, not just any old woman. Not just the woman at the store.
Not a woman that means nothing to you, but
what is the difference between just needing to kind of unpack about the day and tell your husband or your whatever, tell him all the things that are so hard about the day? What's the line between just healthy getting it out of your system versus having a big gripe festival? You know, like where have you sort of transferred from one place to the other? And how would a husband help a wife in this situation who might perchance be doing this thing?
You mean complaining rather than...
Yes. I think we can assume that, let's just say that the woman is griping, complaining, saying how bad everything is. Everything's terrible. My day was awful and the worst, and here's all the bad things. How does a husband go about helping a wife in that situation? I think what we should think is, how as wives should we be in that regard when your husband is trying to tell you to cheer up, ye saints of God?
Ideally, he should sing it with an accent. Because nothing provokes anyone more than someone else coming in with a strong cheer up, you saints of God.
There's nothing to worry about.
That's everyone's favorite thing to have someone else do.
It'll bring out the wrath like nothing else.
It is so effective. So I would say that the way it works in our particular marriage is that honestly, Luke doesn't do any tricks there. He just says, I think we need to be thankful. Or it sounds like you're having a bad attitude. Or
actually, so
or
I think
that'll do, pig. He doesn't say that, but he could.
I think, like, if I am tempted to be looking on the grim, dark side about everything, for instance, if I was maybe being afflicted by a petty demon.
Yeah, this is totally hypothetical.
But if I'm just tending to notice the bad deeds that are being done. Ben would usually be like, I get it. Everything's complicated right now. Yes, it's difficult, but let's not lose sight of all of our blessings. Let's make sure that we aren't, missing all of the huge amounts that God has poured out on us, and that you're actually trucking and you're getting it done. And let's not ruin it with attitudes.
Exactly. And I would say Luke would, we've been married long enough now that I feel like there's enough kind of there's a lot of cues that are don't have to be verbalized all the way, if that makes sense. But one of the things that I will do is I've said this on the podcast before, I will give him a heads up sometimes. It's like, I know how I need to deal with this. I am not falling into sin about it. I just want you to hear I just want to tell someone this story and have you understand it. And that helps because it helps from the perspective of me, just because you can be provoked by someone telling you what you already know and have applied. Like, if you're feeling vulnerable, you're like, I just want you to know how hard this day was. In which case, he gives me a hug and is like, oh my word, that's funny. Or, he's not needing to counsel me because I did already know that I shouldn't fall into sin about that, or that I shouldn't. And I'm not in sin about it. But if I'm being eggy, and like, and then this happened, he is not afraid of me. And I think that the best gift a husband can give his wife is to not be afraid of her.
That's for sure.
And to be willing to not be afraid of her. and to just hold the line while not being afraid of her. Yeah. And not to be so tender about how I feel that he wouldn't say, that doesn't sound like a good attitude, and I think we should pray about it.
Or it sounds like you're kind of tending to look on the dark side here.
I know Mom tells that brilliant story about when Dad told her to sing a hymn when he had to leave. And he was like, I'd like you to sing a hymn, because she was having a toot of some kind. and that it addressed it so much to her. And it is a really wonderful test, because you think, if you're in the middle of a complaint and someone says, you know what we should do? Let's have a little moment of worship. You're like, why would I do that right now? Nobody wants to sing How Great Thou Art right now, because I'm talking about how petty I am. But it's a good test of, are you actually in total fellowship just talking about your day, or are you actively in sin because you're not ready to talk about?
I think too, like, there are days when every which thing goes wrong, and I think that a good test, like, just as far as like, have you crossed over, is, are you able to look at it with humor and gratitude, or must it be a great tragedy? Now, sometimes there are great tragedies. I'm just talking about the hurly-burly of life, when you run out of the dog food and everything else happens. Well, and the car breaks down and the bread goes through the rack.
I have a friend, just shout out to Laura, who just told me today about having one of those terrible times where she had gone to the store, and it was like one of those monster big runs where she had like 300 euros of food in her cart, and had to go to the bathroom, and was hot and sweaty, and for some reason her card was declined. Where you're there, you're drawn out. Worst. She's calling her husband to have him call the bank to try to figure out what to do, and she's in the midst of this horrible, panicky feeling situation when a woman that she knows from another church came around the corner and was totally delighted to loan her the money to just pay for her groceries right then and center, and offered to do it. And the point that she made there was that God so much showed his care for her in that moment that you would never have picked. You would never say, one of the ways I'd like to see God's kindness and care for me, and that I would never want to go to the grocery store and have this moment. And yet now that I'm here, if my eyes are open to see what God is actually doing here, I can see beauty in what he's doing, and I can see a different opportunity than I was having. And part of the fun of this is that how much it blesses this other woman to help her.
Yeah.
And she was so delighted because she's not usually there on Monday. And she's not, how happy it is. And I think my point is just simply that sometimes our trials they're the perfect context for us to see God's grace to us. Mm-hmm. And if we get so caught up in fussing about them, we're missing a lot of really edifying, faith-building things that go on when you're having a hard time.
And I think that, at least for me, it seems like there's some days where the circumstances conspire against you. It's nobody, it's just the things, it's you ran out of gas, or you're running late, or, just all the, circumstances keep on jacking you up. But then there's the people. There's people who were rude or thoughtless or didn't help, or those people. And I was laughing because I was talking to one of my girls about this a while ago, where there's a sort of a thing that can happen, and I think it's really funny, where somebody else, let's say somebody else sins, maybe against you, or maybe just in your presence, and it really tweaks you. You know what I mean? And maybe you see somebody being rude, or they're being rude to you, or they're being rude to your husband, or whatever it is. And so then that causes you to fire off and get into a bad place. And I was like, the thing is it's really like being a sympathy puker. Yeah. Because you never see somebody puking and think, that looks like so much fun, I really want to try that. What you do is you think, I hate that so much that I'm going to join them.
Because of my great disgust with this, I'm going to chip in and do some myself.
And that's really what it is. If you allow yourself to fall into sin because somebody else is in sin, then you are sympathy puking with them because of the great disdain that you have for their sin.
Yes.
You thought you'd throw a little in yourself.
Yeah, because you're like, you disgust me. I can vomit better than that.
Yeah. I know. And because it's a really hilarious thing to be so revolted by something that you then immediately must join in with. And I feel like that's what happens when you find yourself angry or put out or just frustrated, or at the end of the day you're just about everybody. It is a version of, let me do the thing I least admire about them. Yeah. I'm going to wallop into it.
It's especially true for mothers who are fed up with their children's misbehavior.
That's for sure.
They're being so petty. You're like, oh. Yeah. I have to say, though, that as a mother of teenagers, that I keep having the big flashbacks to being a teenager. And I think this is exactly that moment where I did not understand why my mom was like, stop it. Stop doing this right now. The hilarious, when they're just teasing each other, like a slap tickle kind of, and they're all having a brilliant time
for the next 10 seconds.
Yeah, but nothing has gone wrong, but they're not yet, but they're having a brilliant time thinking, why would you interfere here?
And you're like, because pretend fights.
Because, and I remember
always universally turn into real fights.
I always hear mom and dad being like, Rachel, Nathan, 10-foot rule. We couldn't come within 10 feet of each other. And I keep thinking about that. I'm like, no. No, I want you to not contact each other. Don't touch each other. Don't tease each other.
I forgot about your 10-foot rule.
Yeah, because it was always...
Was I ever involved in the 10-foot rule?
Probably.
I feel like it was more you and Nate. But
but Nate and I would get into those. We would find some dumb game of slapping Nerf basketballs at each other or something. We're having a grand old time. But I just remember Mom being like, that's enough of that. And it kills me to that.
I like the reflecting back and noticing wise parenting.
You're like,
choices.
oh man, remember when my parents said,
what I like
stop
is
it
that
now.
My kids are old enough now that they reflect back and go, Mom, I am so happy you never let us just get into the baby voice. And we're like, right?
Ooh, right? I'm glad that you recall
I'm glad that you noticed that, because It's true that it's deeply...
We have a weird...
deeply untoward when you have somebody much too old who reverts to the baby voice.
One of my favorite things with having a lot of kids is when one of the older-ish ones turns to explain to one of the younger ones something where they reveal in that moment how great their understanding actually is of the situation. And you have to be like, so you do get that. You do get it. You understand fully how sometimes your body language looks like you're not being an enthusiastic obeyer. And they're like, well...
I know. Well,
yes, I suppose I do.
I do think when our kids were little, there was an offense in our house that was just called weirdness. And we would, well, it was like, you need to be done with the weirdness. And it would be like going into exaggerated voices or funny voices
or stupid dances. Not funny. It's getting into like an alternate personality.
Which the baby voice would be one of those ones, but it was like, no.
It's kind of like if you could get stuck in neener. If you did all of your dancing and activities to neener.
Or if it was just silly, immature stuff, like no, we're not going to do that. Mm-hmm. And it is true that it is not cute when people get there, but it really cracks me up that my kids are old enough to be like, whoa.
I remember that was a close call. I had a close call with that.
That happen.
Oh man.
Yep.
It's fun having kids getting old. It just keeps getting to be more fun.
Mm-hmm. It's true. So should we
Last question.
Yeah, okay, what's another question?
That question was about how do you... These are tense questions that we've answered here. How do you correct sin in your husband?
Ooh.
I think that's a question for the ages that comes off with... I don't know if we can talk about this without 10 bazillion qualifications.
I think we're going to have to run around like an 11-mile circumference of qualifications.
So if we start out by saying we're talking about petty sin, meaning maybe we're talking about being a little short with you or a little selfish or a little...
not remembering to do the thing he said he would do on Tuesday.
Right, slacking off. Or being lazy when you wanted him to be helping you or being more servant-hearted.
Or he's not noticing you
enough.
enough.
Where is your servant leadership?
Yeah.
Where is that?
Not being responsible enough.
So we're talking about petty things. We're not talking about what do you do if you find out your husband has a porn problem or something. We're talking about petty little grievances, the kind that humans are going to always be doing to each other. Mm-hmm. I think I would say what you want to ask the Lord for is greater love to cover it.
Well, because I was going to say, love covers a multitude of sins. Right. And it doesn't just cover a multitude of things that didn't need covering. It covers a multitude
the ones that needed it.
Of sin.
Yeah.
And it's not just like inconveniences, it covers sins.
Yeah, and not yeah, so say your husband was thoughtless of you in something. Then
cover it.
Let the love cover
Don't jot it down in the annals of your brain to bring out.
And don't wait. Yeah, and so the question was specifically phrased in how do you not sound like his mother all the time? And that right there is big time. It's not your job. It is not your job to try to steward his growth and sanctification.
Nope.
Like it is a mother's job to work on her children. So like when we just said you tell your children no weirdness.
Right.
You don't do that to your husband.
No.
You don't get to say, no. I don't like what you did right there for no reason. And
also, just remember, you're not the Holy Spirit. Thank goodness.
Right.
The Holy Spirit will work on your husband, and you can work on yourself.
Yeah, and don't feel bad about putting... If you are not sure if something is a big enough deal to mention or to talk about, then... Don't act like everything is expiring in a hot minute, because just pray about it. Just say like, Lord, if you want me to bring that up, give me a good opportunity and help me to see
and also
clearly and not justify myself and
don't stew on it and bring it out and look at it again and think about it and ponder it and cherish it.
And don't relive it over and over how he did that. But
like,
sometimes it's a real conscious effort to say, okay, that was, I think, typically accidental unkindness. Like that's even in a healthy, happy marriage, there will be plenty of that.
Sure. But I think the biggest thing is letting love cover it is definitely how you should be approaching most of it. Mm-hmm. But of course, anytime, like, your marriage, God willing, is going to get better and better because it's like the two of you are learning to dance together. Mm-hmm. And you're learning the steps, and you don't want to be stepping on each other's toes all the time. So if, like, let's say that there's just something and it's always really difficult for you, like if he tells stories to your friends that you don't appreciate,
or that you're embarrassed
by, and you don't appreciate it or whatever, then I would suggest, of course, you should tell him about it, but not in the moment when you're all whizzed up. Like, maybe give it a beat, and then later,
feel free to say, hey, do you mind if I mention something that's been on my mind? Like, can we talk about this? And explaining it in a totally calm, and not even you owe me an apology. Nope. It is a communication of something,
and it could be something like sort of like, here's the thing, I find myself really tempted to get frustrated when this happens, and I would really love to not do that. But I'm wondering if we could work together on this, because it can be hard for me if...
Exactly.
Is this a cop?
I think we might.
It's a cop. Guys, never before has this happened.
I think...
Should we pause it?
I think... All right, our officer's going to tell us we've been cleared for duty. When we said we might look like creepers behind the La Quinta. We weren't expecting an officer to actually have to come check on us.
It turns out this is a haunt vice up here. He said they get people up here doing illegal deeds.
Which we know, because we see them up here. We don't park, so that's why. But
oh, guys.
Anyways, we're back, and what we should do is wrap this thing up with a tip.
We should. It's a pity we didn't just record that whole thing.
It seemed actually like it would be a little unkind.
And that we might...
He was very gracious.
Then we might have been doing illegal things if we'd recorded. Okay. So, a tip.
Tips?
Okay, I have 2. Look at me. 2.
Becca.
What?
Unprecedented.
Okay, so the first tip I have is, I feel like we've been getting a little wave of new listeners lately. And I think that we should just say that our dad and our mom have both written some really fabulous books on family. And if you have not read them, you should.
They're great.
They're really good.
There's
I have a whole family series.
My big endorsement for my parents' books on marriage, and actually I haven't read a lot of them in a long time.
Raising children.
But as a child who grew up in their home with a front row seat to their marriage and their life together, and we still have that even though we're not in their house, I can read all of the things that they have written and never think that they are being hypocritical at all. And that's a real blessing. But it is also, like, I feel genuinely comfortable saying, listen to them. They know what they're about. Yes. They've been faithfully...
They're doing it well.
They've been faithfully practicing what they preach.
Yeah. And so if you're in the market for marriage books, family books, child-rearing books, there's just a bunch.
Dad's newest one is called Why Children Matter, and that's a great one.
But he has one on raising sons and
future men, reforming marriage.
My mom has one for wives. So anyway, Doug Wilson, Nancy Wilson, the family books. You really would do well.
Mostly, I think they're all at Canon Press. So if you go to Canon, you can get them there, and probably on Amazon. I'm sure.
I'm sure they are too. Anyway, that's one. My other one is
hot tip, Becca.
Hot tip. Look at me going there. The other one though is a Netflix recommend.
Get out.
Yeah.
Oh, I know which one this is going to be.
It's actually hilarious. I might be the only person who finds this interesting.
I don't think so. I think since it's
really
on...
good.
Yeah.
It's a series. Okay, so it's British, but it is on Netflix. And it's a series on Italian gardens, like Renaissance gardens. And then there's one on French gardens as well. And it's Monty Don. And if you're interested in like history and gardening and how those things come together,
orchard,
and if you're living in the cold of January and you are, feeling like you wish you were in a sunny place with beautiful lemons growing, you can get a dose of that by looking at the Italian gardens. I thought it was really fascinating. And the other thing that cracks me up about it is you're learning about the Italian gardens of the Renaissance, but you're also learning about how English people look at gardens. And that's very different.
That's not something that, if you're not English, you don't know that already. No. You don't already have a read on how they're looking at a garden.
And it's very different than how Americans do it. And when I was in England, I frequently felt very at sea. Because I'd be like, what are you? And it was interesting, but it felt very foreign. It's like a different way of looking at it. Anyway, I am enjoying that. So that's my second recommendation.
Becca's the double dog tipster tonight. So
double dog tipster is basically my.
No wonder she almost got arrested.
Oh, do you have one, Rach? Do you got something for us?
Oh man, Beck, do I have tips? I doubt it. I have a tip.
Okay.
You should go finish your audiobook to Even Exile, because I finished Yoo-Hoo today.
Oh my goodness.
And the guys at Canon specifically mentioned how much faster I was than you. So it was a little area in which I like to pride myself.
Well, I admit that it has been many months.
Very few things are more...
I'm like halfway through the book, but it's harder for me to squidge on in there and sit down. It is. It's harder, Rach.
Harder, right?
My life's harder.
Because your 3-year-old is difficult to find some, Yeah.
Well, it's easier to find someone to watch your 3-year-old than it is to find someone to come sub for your classes. I mean, Speaking of that, you're subbing for me tomorrow.
Guys, we should let you go. We're being blatherers tonight.
We are. Anyway,
I feel like we should edit this episode much more fiercely than we're going to, because we don't edit our episodes. Would have been good if we'd gone over this with a red pen.
How about after the tips, we could put in a retractions section? It's like we'd like to take back that thing Rachel said.
We'd like to be less weird in this episode, less inclined to tangents and 4-hour talks about how we named our children. All right, but you have a good night, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
You think of yourself now, and then in 4 years' time, what do you want yourself to look like? And is the education that you're considering going to help you get to that place?
When you're a student, you want to become like your teacher. You're going to become like your teacher. Looking at NSA beforehand, I knew I wanted to become like the men who are teaching here.
Fireman, husband, father, doctor, no matter where you want to go, NSA is just such good preparation for the person that you want to be.
If you want to be an effective Christian, you need to be able to lead and shape culture. If you want to do that, no matter what your occupation is, you need to shape yourself, prepare yourself as a person for that job. And liberal arts is, I think, the best education you can have for that.
To learn more, check us out online at nsa.edu.